Welcome to Living by Faith, your bright spot to your Saturday morning, where each week we will hear from God's Word, engage with captivating guests, and be encouraged to live faith in our everyday. I'm your host, Trillia Newbell, and I'm so glad to be here. And this is the hope, this is the desire, is that we can walk by faith, live by faith. Boy, do we need help. And God, in his kindness, he provides help through his word and through other people, which is why I love getting to come every Saturday morning to talk with people who help us live by faith and walk out our faith. It's so good. It's back to school season where I'm from. I don't know where you are, but my kid, one of them has already had a full week of classes. So she's off and into her high school sophomore year. And my son, he heads off to college just 1 week away. And I can't help but wonder. And I do wonder if other parents, when you're sending your kids off on their own in many ways, if you wonder the same. Here's what I wonder. Did we, my husband and I, do enough to prepare our son for this next phase of life? I mean, we're not done, right? My understanding is once a parent, you're always parent. You're parenting, but we've done what we can. And was it enough? I don't know. In many ways, I'd say yes. And in other ways, probably not. I really, probably not if we're honest with ourselves. My son and so many like him who are older and heading into full-on adulthood, kind of, because we're still helping and supporting, right? They have the chance to choose, right? They can make decisions that will not only grow them closer to Jesus, but impact the rest of their lives. They're now making their own choices. They're not under our roof, so to speak, which means under our rules. Now, of course, we still will share encouragement. We will tell him, okay, this is what we think is wise and what's not wise, but day to day, they're on their own. The wrong choice doesn't mean that they are hopeless. And I think that's something I have to encourage my own heart and remind myself, and maybe that encourages you. They might make the wrong choice. It doesn't mean that they are hopeless. With God, there's always hope. But there are consequences to bad choices that we make in life. Consequences are real and they live, and they could also affect their whole lives. Not hopeless, but consequences happen when you make bad choices. But there are people who have committed their ministry work to helping young men, in particular, make wise and biblical choices. People like my guest today, Clarence Shuler, who wrote the book, Choose Greatness, 11 Wise Decisions That Brave Young Men Can Make. Clarence, welcome to Living by Faith.
Trillia, thanks so much for having me.
I am in that stage where my young man, he's off. He's off to the races. He's gone. Well, not quite, but as gone as you can imagine after, for a 19-year-old. So it's really wild to me. But I have been thinking, did we do enough? Did we prepare enough? I don't, I just, we really won't know until he's out there and do on his own. But you wrote a book, and I do wonder, when you wrote this book, Choose Greatness, what age range were you hoping would grab this book?
Well, our initial age range, we're hoping to get 10-year-olds to 18-year-olds, because if we want to have good young men to be good boyfriends and be good husbands and fathers, we got to get them before they're there. So we were hoping 10 to 18, but we've discovered that a lot of college students, freshmen, and also guys in their late 20s, even some pro athletes, love this book and grabbed it and read it and found it very helpful.
Well, I actually, I think it's really good. What you're saying is wise. You want to help young men before they have to make these choices, prepare for their lives, and and that's so it makes sense to me that the age range would be 10 to 18 or so, which is a pretty broad age range, but I that makes a lot of sense. I will say though that it's often they make a bad choice and then they realize, okay, I need I need some help. So it doesn't surprise me that the older guys or they feel squeezed because right
Mm,
now my son, he's not making a lot of choice. I mean, we have nurtured and cared for him and we've fed him. Yeah. Clothed him. He hasn't had to really, he's not been squeezed, I'll say that. He's been squeezed in
mm,
other things, relationally, other things. But
mhm,
but he's been taken care of. So I do imagine that when you have to make financial choices on your own and when you have to start really you're making you're surrounded by people who are making bad choices, getting
mm,
into parties. Those are the kinds of things that you have to start really deciding, who am I following? Am I following the world or am I following the Lord? Do I am I going to make and that's the choices that we've helped him make or
mm,
even if they are unbelievers, am I going to fall into patterns that are harmful or not? So I think those are the kinds of things that that 18 to 19-year-old, 20, 21 and up. So it doesn't surprise me that you've got NFL players and you've got um, college students and all of these people who are you mentioned are navigating to the book now, navigating that completely makes a lot of sense. But what are some of the biggest issues that teenage boys you think are
mm.
facing today?
Well, you just said it, making decisions. And boys 10 years old and up are making decisions. And so, what we want to do as parents, if possible, we want to begin to ask them the question, where you want to be in 3 to 5 years? Because typically, teenagers young people think just now, they don't think long term. You use the term consequences, they tend not to think about that. So, we want to know where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years. How will I get there? What price will I have to pay? And those that's really important to do that. So we were trying to help them with the book to think about authority, their work ethic, education, how to treat young ladies, and also dealing with law enforcement. So um, these are questions we want them to be able to ask themselves. And I'll have a litany of questions, about 12 questions. You want them to ask themselves when you're not around.
Well, I think that's so important. And I'm eager even now before we send him say good okay see you later, before we send him off to college for him to be able to answer those questions. I think that's really really wise. Now I guess the question I have is when you wrote this book, what were you think like, what are some of the pain points that you see boys experiencing, especially that teenage boys, or the things that maybe they are struggling with, or even in your counseling? Because I know that um, you're the president and CEO of BLR, Building Lasting Relationships, and I don't know if now that I'm assuming that's relationships with for married couples. Is that correct, or is it with relationships with all people?
It covers it's primarily marriage, but it also covers people who don't look like us, cross cultural, and also includes singles as well.
Well,
So
go ahead.
no, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, so my question is, as you are counseling and looking and thinking, is there something about teenage boys that you think, hey, parents listening right now, this is what you need to look out for. These are some of the pain points or some of the things that they or might be struggling with.
Well, our society today, because we're seeing less, sometimes with less impact of fathers, young men really want a father figure if they don't have their natural father with them. to help them navigate that. Now, they won't always ask for that, but they really flock to that. They can have it. And one of the key components of the book is to have a young man go through the book with his father or father type substitute so he can see that. Because if a young boy can hear his father's stories when he was a young boy, it fills in gaps in his life, because young guys grow up not knowing why they are the way they are. And you usually get this story from their dad. Some of the pain points you talked about are issues with education, how to respect women and girls. What about sex when they're old enough to have sex, but not emotionally ready to have sex, and especially not to have sex before marriage? Things how to live longer, learn to say no to drugs, how to invest in other people, how to serve people, and then really probably the most important chapter in the book. In the end, is knowing the truth about God, who is God, and how to have a personal relationship with Him. Because our book is written so that really non-believers can actually grab the book and relate to it, and hopefully we earn their trust through the book. And by the end, they can really sit and ask good questions about who is God and how does He impact my life.
Yes, and that really is ultimately what we want our listeners and what we want all young men to know is understanding and God, and getting in His Word and knowing who He is. And so when we come back, I want us to dive into some of those tougher topics and how we can help young men. But for those of you listening in today, I'd love for you to call in and ask Clarence Schuler a question. We are going to give away copies of Choose Greatness. We have 5 copies to give away, and you can give us a call at 877-548-3675 or 877-LIVE-675. Again, give us a call and ask us a question. We're trying to prepare young men and, of course, young women to choose greatness, to really walk out their faith, but they have lots of choices and lots of things that are coming at them. Give us a call, and we would love to answer your pressing questions at 877-548-3675, 877-LIVE-675. You may always email us at livingbyfaith@moody.edu. I'm Trillia Newbell. You're listening to Living by Faith, and we'll be back when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. I am talking about raising young, wise men today. And I have a young man. I also have a wonderful daughter. But today we're mostly focusing on young men. And I think it's important that we think through raising men who are wise and making good decisions, and who ultimately are godly men. And, I was wondering, Clarence, as you were looking back at your own life, what are some of the wise decisions that you chose or looking back on the trajectory of your life, how have you seen the value in making wise decisions?
Well, I was led to Christ by a guy named Gary Chapman, before he was famous, before he wrote the 5 love languages. And I was trying to go to school, play basketball, and at a school, an ACC school, Atlantic Coast Conference Basketball School, which was one of the best basketball schools in the country at the time. But anyway, long story short, I didn't go there. And because Gary had gone to Moody, I said, I'll go there because that'll help me to be maybe half the man of God he was. But unfortunately, I had some issues. I was frustrated. I was mad. Struggling with a lot of issues, my insecurity, struggling with diversity issues and stuff like that at the time. And this is 1972. And so when I was at Moody my freshman year, and throughout my time there, I would usually flunk my midterm and ace my final. I was all about beating the system. But what happened, the end of my first semester of my senior year, I ended up forgetting my exam schedule and flunking out. And the result of that was that I became homeless in Chicago at
Mm,
the age of 20. And so, but my father had passed. I actually led my dad to Christ when I was 18, my freshman year, but he
wow.
died that same year I was 20. And Gary
Mm.
Chapman, for all practical purposes, became my dad. So when I look at that, it just helped me understand that we have choices, we make decisions, and we have consequences to those decisions. So that was a really big thing, sort of a life changing point where I had to make some decisions about where I was going to go forward. But fortunately, I had a godly man to step into my life and to help give me some direction or talk about some possible options. So as I look back, uh, hearing Gary, going back to school, getting my grades up, and going to school, and that really changed my life, and I think he'll prepare me too to become a husband and father.
That's amazing. The more I hear about Gary Chapman, the more I just am grateful for his life and ministry, and to hear how he took you on and served you is remarkable. And we have a caller on the line who I'd like to get on because she wants some of that similar encouragement. Um,
Mm.
yes, Joanne from Florida. We love to hear from you.
Hi, yes, good morning. Thank you so much for taking my call and for these resources. My question is, I am a single mom. I've been a single mom part of my life. I have a 17-year-old. He just got baptized last Sunday. I
Mm.
belong to a very small but mighty church where there's no youth groups anymore after COVID. He did start a youth group on Thursdays now about 2 months ago at a different church. So I just wanted your advice now that he's beginning senior year. He has struggled a bit. He lost his brother. He's going through
Mm.
the hormone changes. He doesn't have to see friends. He's so curious about the Lord. And I heard, how a godly man is important. And he has a father, but his dad is not. We're not married anymore, but
Mm.
he's
Okay.
not a man of faith. So I just want to know what your advice would be to continue to lead him or open his heart so that he's hungry and guided by the things of God.
Well, that's a great question. In our book, we actually encourage mothers like you to maybe, if there is a godly man in the church, someone you think you could trust your son with, or someone your son thinks would be a good guy, maybe possibly talking to that guy about being a mentor for your son. There
Mm,
used to be a program, I'm not sure if it's still in existence, called Big Brothers, and or either older family members, maybe a possible uncle or someone. But if not, and if you get someone who's not a relative or whatever, then we encourage you to also do, I hate to say it, but to do background checks, because now way people, to protect your son, it's really important to do that. But if you can, I would encourage you to get the book and walk through the book with him,
yeah.
because a young man would love to have someone talk to about it. Now, a couple of chapters might be awkward when it talks about respecting women and girls. That would be good, but when it talks about being sexually responsible, that could be kind of awkward. Um, but I think that would really help him to raise questions, because in the back of the book there are 12 questions that you want him to ask when you're not around to help him make right decisions. Like that one question would be like, if I make this decision, will it have a negative or positive effect on my health? How would it impact my parent, or in your case, my mom or other adults who care for me? So you want to just begin to think, give them kind of a checklist to do that. And I think the two of you could read together. I think it might really be helpful to him. And also, just so we're saying this so I don't forget, the book is pretty gender neutral, except for those two chapters on respecting women and sexually responsible. Um, Young ladies need the same help as well, and with their dad or with their mom, to walk through the book and answer some of these questions, because there are questions at the end of every chapter.
Joanne, thank you so much for your call. And I will be praying that the Lord will provide godly men to surround your
Mm.
son to help you as you encourage him. But I am also really glad that we are going to give you a copy of Choose Greatness so
Mm.
that you can walk through these questions and these chapters with your son. But I can hear the love you have for him on your
Mm.
in your voice. And I just thank you for loving him and serving him. And he's going to remember you and honor you. I believe that so much. So thank you so much
Amen.
for the call. Go ahead.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Thank you. Oh, stay on the line and we will make sure that you get that copy so that my producer can get your address. And I could just hear the tears in her eyes. And
Mm,
the Lord is he longs for every I really do believe this, every child to know him and to have a safe and loving environment. And she is trying so hard to provide that for her kid. And you really do advocate very strongly in Choose Greatness that every young man needs to have either a father or a father substitute. And it sounds like it's because you had it in your own life.
well, it just makes a tremendous difference. Even as a mature, I won't call myself old, but as a maturing man, I still have older men help me. And it was so critical, especially as I was getting married, to have older men, godly men. They helped me with how to parent. They helped me with how to treat my wife, Brenda. They helped me understand long-term consequences and little things. And that's something we don't often get in our Christian communities, unfortunately, today. And so it's just invaluable to have these older mentors to learn from, because they live life, and it makes things better for everybody.
Yes, amen to that. We have Amita on the line from Texas.
Hi. And thank
Hi.
you. I'm enjoying your program, and I wanted to first of all thank you and the guests. And
Mm.
I have a question. I have a 10. Well, he'll be 10 next month. 10-year-old
Hmm.
grandson next month. Father passed away a couple of years ago. My son, so
Okay.
he's my grandson,
Okay.
and he is a great leader. But he
Hmm.
likes to follow. He know
Yeah.
he is one of those young men, real quick, who he was in a spelling bee, was about to go and represent his district
Hmm.
because he didn't want his friends to think that he was smart. He
Mm.
missed one of the easiest words.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
So that type of guy, he knows the Bible. Well, I'm an influence in his life. I'm his grandma, and I
Okay.
try my best to do everything I can. And I'm trying so hard. I don't
Yeah.
want him to be a follower.
I get it. I get that. Clarence, what were you thinking?
Well, my thought was, one, you've done a great job with him. The fact that he's so sensitive to his friends, he didn't want to embarrass his friend by by answering your question correctly. That's great to have a sensitivity, but I would also encourage him that he is a leader. And because if he is a leader, and if that guy is really his friend would actually want him to do the very best he could. And he wants to do the very best to represent God and glorify God. So that's not a bad thing to be smart. Unfortunately, we don't have time on the show to talk about why a lot of people see education as bad, but we want to show them the opposite and the doors it opens. And, in the book, we talk about Ben Carson, and he had some of that same thing, but his mother, a single mom who couldn't read, turned things around for him. So I would just sit down and tell him, hey, look at his potential. He can be a leader, and he will help his friends more if he's a leader, because they will listen to him. And so I would just kind of not push him, but sort of give him that option and direction to do that, and tell him how education really makes a big difference as he does those things. So, and not to be ashamed of being a leader, because he's actually helping people as he leads, but to really kind of have a servant leader mindset, which helps him not just dominating people, but actually serve them through his gifting and the things you have been teaching them. So the book, again, I think was something great for you to sit down and read with him if you have time, and walk him through that. And I think that would really help him.
Almeda, stay on the line and we will make sure you get a copy of Choose Greatness. And I just wanted to also add that you can help him to fear the Lord above man. So I think there's a little bit of fear of man there. And what that means is that he's afraid of what people might think of him. And so I think as he trusts that God is with him, God is for him, that he doesn't have to be afraid of people, I think that could also help him as he is trying to because a lot of times when you're following people and you're just going with a crowd, it's because you don't want to stand out. And I think that real leaders and true leaders they're not afraid. Not all leaders, but they're not afraid to be bold for the Lord, to stand up for what is right. And so that's another thing that I'm going to be praying for your grandson as you're teaching him, that he is safe. He doesn't have to be afraid of what people think, and he can walk knowing that God is with him and that you are for him and God ultimately is for him. So, Almeida, stay on the line. We will get your address and we will make sure you get a copy of Choose Greatness. And I am talking with Clarence Schuler. He is the president and CEO of BLR, Building Lasting Relationships. And when we come back from the break, we will continue this conversation on Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. More when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. I am talking with Clarence Schuler. He is the president, CEO of BLR, Building Lasting Relationships. He is also co-author with Dr. Gary Chapman on the book Choose Greatness, 11 Wise Decisions That Brave Young Men Make. And we've been talking about all of the different things that young men need. And we have a caller, Amanda from Florida, on the line, and I'd love to hear your comment.
Looking back as a person who attended youth groups and church on a regular basis, I found that I didn't really get the discipleship foundation. Yes, I was going and participating and doing their activities, being at their Wednesday night service, but the discipleship somehow was not given. So if parents could be, maybe more engaging and make sure that they're in a place, because after I was about 21 and then I began to kind of like seek God on my own and then was able to be discipled, then I was able to make much better decisions and moving forward in my life.
Amanda, thank you for that comment. You know, that is a problem that we've seen in the church, is that we can have youth groups that are fun, and they're fun and engaging, but what Amanda needed was discipleship. And I see a movement now where a lot of youth groups are trying to re-engage the mind so that the students are in the Word of God. And that's what you needed, Amanda. And even my local church has more of those discipleship groups, one-on-one discipleship, diving deeper into God's Word, because that's so important. And so, Amanda, your comment is really helpful. Clarence, I'm going to have you speak to your comment as well. Clarence, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I do. I was really blessed to have, after accepting Christ, to have Gary Chapman actually disciple me. I would actually walk to his home every Saturday morning, and he would walk me through the Word. And discipleship is really key, and it's a key for Gary as well. And it's a passion for me. In fact, I've written a book on discipleship. It's called The Challenge: Cultivating Disciples That Last. And you can get that on Amazon. But again, it's called The Challenge: Cultivating Disciples That Last. And it deals with lordship and prayer, but also deals with things like being single, contentment, making wise decisions, how, dealing with technology. So it's a holistic approach to scriptures that a lot of times we don't get, that goes from the Old Testament, New Testament. And she brings up a really important point that a lot of times in our churches today, we aren't doing a lot of discipleship, which really makes a difference, because discipleship helps us. If we really make disciples, we haven't made a disciple till our disciples made a disciple. So we make it ongoing, but it really changes our life, and it helps us with evangelism and everything else. So that's a really important point about discipleship. And Gary and I feel that through this book, that's given some practical discipleship as you're walking young men or possibly young women through really key issues that they need to be aware of.
Yes. So, Amanda, stay on the line and we will make sure that we get your address so we can get you a copy of Choose Greatness by Gary Chapman and Clarence Schuler. David in Missouri, what's on your heart?
Well, I'm actually here in Chicago. I am from Missouri. My wife's in the military here. We're at Fort Sheridan. And
Okay.
I've been dealing with men maybe for about 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a men's group in St. Louis. I've got a men's group in Minnesota. I'm dealing with one here in Chicago. And my biggest, I want to call it a headache, but my issue is in Milwaukee, and I'm having a hard time getting the men to participate.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't get them to show up. I buy food. I try to bring all type of games, whatever I can to get the men to show up. I just can't get them to get there. And I'm just trying to get some advice on how to get the men to show up.
Well,
That's a
first
great
of all,
question.
yeah, it is. First of all, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing and just praise God for the success you're having in all the other cities. I think in Milwaukee, if the people aren't showing up, but you have a relationship with several of them individually, I would just do kind of do a little, I don't know, survey, but just kind of ask them individually, say, hey, I'm trying to do this and this, and guys aren't showing up. Why do you think guys aren't showing up? And then as we listen and let them tell you, they might unlock a key to why they're not showing up. Because it's great that you're providing food for them and stuff like that. But if they're not showing up, there's a reason. And I would just simply ask them. And so, and a lot of times when we ask people questions, one, it helps them feel valued and cared for, but it also helps them feel heard. And they would say, hey, this guy really cares about me. So sometimes maybe just having that one-on-one time with a few of them can unlock a key to help you so you can reach more of the masses of groups as to why they're not coming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I've been reading Titus 2, and to me in
Okay.
Titus 2 pretty much it's saying how the older people who are married supposed to teach the younger people, and that's what's missing to me, is that we're not giving that today. It's almost when you hear the gospel, it's on a different topic versus older people who've been married, to teach the younger people how to be in relationship. I've been hearing you. I was listening to you this morning on how the relationship that you've had with Mr. Chapman and what he's
Mm-hmm.
given you, and I've been trying to do those same things. But I think that when men get together, we need other men. Just like when women need other women to get together, because there's something that you have that I may need. Same
Yeah.
thing with an older lady. There's something that she has that a young woman needs. And sometimes a younger woman may just give something to an older woman. That's why I
It's
say
true.
women
Yeah.
need other
Yeah.
women and men need men. We have to have these things, because in the Bible, in the beginning, God sat there and taught Adam how to be. And
Yes.
right now, we're
David,
But
not doing that
it,
today.
yes, yes. David, stay on the line and we will make sure to get your address so that you can choose greatness. And I love this conversation because it's absolutely right. We need to be discipling. And back to the last caller's comment, Amanda, I do think that that's part of what's missing in the church is that discipleship. We want to go and make disciples, evangelize and share the gospel, but we forget the second half of that verse and teach them to obey all that God has commanded. And so it is really important. And I loved, Clarence, some of the things that you were discussing about the need for David to step out and go one on one. Did you have any further thoughts?
well, yeah, just a couple of things. I think that it's important, and with the younger generation, I have had the opportunity to speak at Moody Chapel several times over the years, and being my age, what some of the students have said has helped them to listen to me is that I'm transparent and I'm authentic,
Yes.
and they can relate
Mm.
to that. And even though it's a chapel setting, I asked their permission. We talked about sex in chapel, and I said, "Can we talk about this? Is it okay if I talk to you like adults?" And after the chapel, so many of the young men and women came up and said, "I knew it was sort of a rhetorical question, but we appreciate the fact you asked us." And so I think as an older generation with the younger generation, we can't force truth, even though it's truth. We can't force it on them. It's relationship oriented first, and then we can share. But we have to listen and ask, because that's how they buy into us and want to be with us. So I think it's really important.
It is so important. And, you know, I love this. This is such a great conversation because I do believe that the kids these days, they see right through fake. They're not gonna, they just see it. They see it from a mile away. They want
Yes.
authentic, real, genuine relationship with Jesus. Um, where have you gone wrong? They want to
Right.
know what is real. And so I love that, and I think we can all do that. We can do it with our kids, we can do it with our neighbors, we can care for our church by showing the real Jesus, being authentic, repenting, and asking for the help that we need so that we can display that to kids. More on Living by Faith when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. We have been having a really helpful, encouraging conversation with Clarence Shuler, the co-author of Choose Greatness. He is co-author with Dr. Gary Chapman. And we've been talking about decisions that young men can make, and we've kind of shifted a bit. The conversation has gone a little less on decisions and a lot more on discipleship, which ultimately is the goal, right? So we've been trying to help. Well, how do we come alongside these young men and disciple them and encourage them, the church, people? And I think it's such an important topic and an important part of this. But you talked about education, and you said we didn't have time to get into it, but I want to get into it because you do spend a whole chapter talking about seeking knowledge through education. Why is education so important?
Well, education is important. Just if you want, as a guy, one of our core values as a man is we want to provide for our families. And when we feel we can't provide for our families, we might not verbally say it, but we feel less than a man. If a young guy goes to high school but drops out, he's probably going to earn about $20,000 a year. If he gets a high school diploma, he's more likely to make probably a minimum of 42, you know, thousand a year, almost 45,000 a year. If he gets a high school diploma, and if he goes to college, he's more likely to earn 60,000 and upwards if he'll get a college degree. So that's a long-term decision. A lot of times we don't see, we get frustrated. So that's important. I do also want to say for the inner city, the reality of it is a Harvard Research Project did some research on this, and I've studied over the last 20 years. A lot of times you have teachers who come in who are not from the inner city, and it's called the epidemic of fourth grade boys, Black boys. And between third grade and fourth grade, Black boys, their voices change, they get louder. And the way African Americans process information is different from those who are Caucasian or other cultures. And when they don't get that kind of education, a lot of times when they speak out and become louder, some of the teachers become threatened by that and they put them in special ed. And as a result of that, these kids tend to drop out of special ed, but they tend to be very smart. And
Yeah.
so they would go back and say in the neighborhood, they start preaching that education is not good. They're not going to tell them about I was put in special ed because they don't want their friends to think they're dumb. And so there's been this misinterpretation, understanding about education. So a lot of young guys are saying that education is not good. And so if they see someone really smart, they say, well, you must be, I wouldn't say Uncle Tom, but you're not really being like you should be, and they get put down. And so we have to break that. But that's kind of the foundation in the inner city by a lot of people saying, or young men saying that education is not important because they tend to be targeted to put in special ed. So it makes a huge group, a huge difference of understanding that. And that's why sitting down and going through the book with them about how important education is long term is really, really critical for our young men in the inner city.
Well, it also sounds like there needs to be some growing education with some of our educators so that they
Yes,
understand,
yes, yes,
development and understand.
yes.
Yeah, so that I think is of utmost importance because if those who are teaching the kids get that wrong, well, that it does plant a seed that can be lifelong, last for a long time and have consequences that like what you were saying that impact a kid's life and the community's life
It does. It does.
deeply,
You're exactly
deeply.
right. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's important that educators get educated, and I think yeah, because you have to. I mean, you're serving kids. You've got to know about development, and I do believe that, and I say that also understanding that there's so many teachers who are serving well and who are
Hmm.
caring for kids well, but this is something that we just have to get right. We have to get right. But I love that you are in communities helping others understand and get educated because it makes a difference. And I do think that it is important that you that people understand about education and today's world where technology. I mean, people can um, make a YouTube channel and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, it's such an interesting world we're
Hmm.
currently living in, where I could also see how, because of today's interesting society, we people might downgrade education. And I think studies have shown, and this is unfortunately, you're right. We only have about 5 more minutes in this whole show. What we're talking about today, we need to talk. We could spend the whole show on, but I will say, I think studies have shown that there are fewer men entering higher postgraduate, undergraduate. I'm sorry. High school education. In other words, they're
Yeah.
not going into college. There are fewer of them. Um, than ever before. Yet, well, while they're women, there are more going to college. Have you seen that study? Is that correct?
Well, that is correct, and it goes back to that Harvard Research Project study and others that show because, particularly Black Americans and the Spanish-speaking community males have really been targeted, and so when they're put in special ed in the elementary school and stuff like that, then they see no need to go to college. They drop out, and unfortunately, a lot of times they would do other things that are not always what the law allows, and so that is pushing a big push for them as a reason why they're not going to college at the same rate as young women. So that they're all tied together. And I've done a research project or seminars for people called "How to Effectively Teach Cross Culturally." That takes into account how we process information and those things as well. So that is a big issue. And very very much alive today. So that's what our young guys, especially young men of color, are facing in the particularly in the public school setting. And sometimes it's really even tougher in the Christian schools for kids of color. So that
Mm.
is a big issue.
Well, I think it's so good that you bring this up, and so that their awareness is often the beginning of action. So if you're not aware that this is happening, then now you are. And so what can we do as normal people, ordinary people who maybe we're not experiencing that? How can we support a community that might be experiencing this education gap that you're speaking about?
That's a great question. I had a privilege, and it might sound funny, but I had a privilege growing up in the 60s of being in a segregated neighborhood. And what was really great about that is that you had a whole community telling you that you could be great and that was with you. And when your parents took you to school, you had these teachers. If you didn't do your homework, those teachers would spank you. Now I realize they can't do that. It's against the law and stuff today and stuff like that.
Right.
But back then when you were poor, no one really cared. but but that whole community aspect where people looked out not only for their own kids but other kids and challenged them to study. And so I think whether you're a single parent or married, I think we have to really get back into really helping our kids with education, make education fun, show the value in it. One thing Ben Carson said about even being poor, when he read books, it took him around the world and it
Mm.
began to help them dream. You know, So I think those are really important things. So if we change our mindset toward that, that's important. And young people of color, particularly Black Americans, need to be nurtured because we learn in the context of relationship, not just information. So I think understanding that, and you said earlier, educating the educators, but also if our parents say we can actually do more than they think by spending time reading with their kid for 30 minutes or an hour every day, or trying to help with their homework if they can, or talk about their homework and give the child more of an incentive to study, we can make a huge difference, even if nothing else changes.
I love that. So we do not want to go back to segregation, but we do need to go back to community. And community is important and coming together. So I think that community aspect, and encourage your neighbors, encourage them that they can do great things. And that doesn't mean big stage. That means living a life that is glorifying to the Lord and honorable, and living in a manner that is worthy of the gospel. That to me is the great things that they can do. And we, Clarence, this has been awesome. And we barely scratched the surface of your book, which is, we're going to have you back on, because I think that there's so much more to this conversation to be had. So thank you so much for coming on. Clarence Shuler, thank you for being my guest today.
Well, thanks for having me, Trillia. It was fun to be with you. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Also, thanks to the behind-the-scenes team at Moody Radio, my producer, Karen Hendren, my associate producer, Lisa Jimty, my engineer, Merle St. James, and Lisa, who was on the phones. To grow daily in your faith, you can tune into my 52 Weeks in the Word podcast. You can find it at moodyradio.org. To hear today's program again, you'll find it at livingbyfaithradio.org or on the Moody Radio app. You may also connect with us through Facebook and Instagram at Living by Faith Radio. Living by Faith is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.